Good morning, and hey now, PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome to Tuesday's class. We had fun yesterday looking at Batman, the Tim Burton film, and your film scoring assignment, which you'll get to me by today, and we'll see the results for Friday, so can't wait to share that with you. Today we're going to talk about somebody that I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while, and we've mentioned him in classes, and today we'll get to spend some good quality time with the great composer, songwriter, and lovely George Gershwin. Gershwin wrote so many wonderful, beautiful songs that there are just too many to name. And we'll look at his life and where he came from and some of the people that he met that really inspired him and influenced him. And also made sure he stayed kind of on the path of what he was meant to do, which was write wonderful, melodic, beautiful music. And yeah, he's the guy that wrote Summertime. Everybody knows Summertime, right? One of the best songs ever written. Amazing. So many versions. People have covered his songs tremendously. He didn't live that long. He died at 38 years old. So he died in 1937. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to hear the terrific versions that people would cover of his songs. And but you know, what a life he had. So let's get into it. So Russian-Jewish immigrant family, born in Brooklyn. So let's go over to Brooklyn, and mostly, but kind of born in the Lower East Side, raised in the Lower East Side in 1898. That's how long ago it was. So that's the year when all the boroughs start in New York. So before then, there weren't the 5 boroughs. So he's born in that year, where you have Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island. And then a year later, New York starts building the subway system. So a lot of exciting things happening while Gershwin's growing up. And his brother Ira gets a piano, and Ira goes on to write most of the lyrics that he ends up writing. He's playing stickball and kind of just a regular kid, and then around 10 hears a piece of music that really changes his life and gets into it and starts taking piano lessons and theory lessons. And the guy didn't charge him because he said, you're going to be a genius, so you don't need to pay. So let's just take a look at the time period we're talking about. He's writing most of his songs in the 20s and 30s. And these are the other composers going on at the same time. George Gershwin drops out of school at 15 and goes to work writing songs at the Tin Pan Alley. And we looked at the Tin Pan Alley. It's kind of an area in New York where it was like a factory of songwriters. They would just write songs and sell them. And, this is kind of where George Gershwin probably got some of his training in songwriting, even though he did study theory and classical music privately. And I think he was always kind of longing to get validation from classical people, because I think he really liked classical music, but I think he was also really good at just writing melodic music. And when he writes Swanee, that's what makes him super famous and rich, and that's his first breakthrough in 1919, which Al Jolson picks up and starts using in his act.
Swanee, how I love you, my dear old Swanee. I'd give the world.
So it sold 1 million copies of the sheet music, and this brings him into some fame. And in the 20s, he starts writing Broadway musical theater stuff, and with his brother Ira writing the lyrics. And by the time we get to 1924, we talked about Henry Mancini. That's the year that he was born. That's the year that Rhapsody in Blue is premiered. And I've played Rhapsody in Blue in class for you guys, and it's one of the first, and this is why Gershwin is so important, because he's really one of the first composers to bring jazz into the concert hall. The concert hall is the orchestra, and usually they would, jazz would be in a club, classical music would be in a concert hall. He kind of brought jazz into the concert hall a little bit, and Rhapsody in Blue was a huge piece and kind of put him on the map in the sense where serious, quote unquote, serious composers took notice of him, serious music critics. This wasn't just Tin Pan Alley stuff. This was a serious type of work that had elements of jazz and that were blended so well together that it ended up sounding like beautiful, great music that had a Broadway classical music style. And I think Woody Allen probably captured it in the most beautiful way with the opening of his film Manhattan. Wonderful scene. I mean, that's the opening of the film, and it's all just scenes of New York, and that whole soundtrack to Manhattan is all Gershwin music. And I think Woody Allen really felt that Gershwin was he was a New Yorker at heart, and a lot of his songs kind of Woody Allen kind of always associated George Gershwin with New York, even though he lived in Hollywood later in his life. So, but Rhapsody in Blue, I mean, you know, it's a wonderful piece. I mean, it's piano and orchestra, and he played the piano. Freddie Groffet orchestrated it, but he would go on to orchestrate his own music later, because I think Gershwin was always wanting to, you know, learn more and study. And after Rhapsody in Blue, he goes to Europe, and he really wants to start learning more classical music, and meets with Ravel, and who we did a class on, and also with Nadia Boulanger, and who didn't accept him. She thought rigorous classical music, you know, what she was teaching, would ruin his jazz influence and ruin his style. And Ravel said, "I can't teach you. Why be a second-rate Ravel when you can be a first-rate Gershwin?" So I think those were compliments. I don't know if he took them. He was a neurotic Jew. I know that he was anxious, depressed, and OCD, so he probably didn't take them very well. But I think in the end, the classical people were like, hey, like, you know, there's nothing we can... And I know Ravel loved jazz, so I think he probably really loved his music. Probably not Nadia Boulanger, because she was just in a strict classical world, but... And there's stories that, you know, it was either Stravinsky or Ravel, and they said, you know, when they asked Gershwin what kind of money he made, and they found out, they said, "We should be studying with you." But living in Europe, he composes an American in Paris, which is played all the time, and one of the best pieces. And they made a movie of it later with Gene Kelly, and it's a lovely little movie. But he starts in 1934 writing in South Carolina, writing an opera that's going to really change a lot of things and confuse a lot of people, confuse a lot of critics, and confuse a lot of people that weren't sure what to make of it. And that is Porgy and Bess. people didn't know if this was an opera, a folk opera, a musical. They didn't get it. What I'm playing now is my favorite version, arranged by Russell Garcia and Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald, and they do the whole Porgy and Bess opera. They do it in a kind of a musical style way, but Gershwin wrote it seriously, in the sense that he took it seriously, and it's got some of the best songs ever written. And it was very controversial. First off, it was written for an all-black cast, and they were all trained black opera singers, which in 1935 was unheard of. And even his brother Ira Gershwin said it shouldn't be played by a white cast. That's just not what it's meant for. And so it was really great for black performers to be a part of this. Some people had problems with, well, it's kind of stereotypical because it's a disabled black man who's kind of poor, and he's trying to protect Bess from this drug dealer on the streets. And people kind of thought that, although Gershwin didn't hire any of the people from the Met because he didn't think they knew the jazz idioms, and he was probably right. I mean, he was using, I don't think he liked jazz music. He loved jazz music, and he loved classical music. And I think he was just writing music that he thought sounded good. And because it had jazz elements, why not hire people that sing jazz and know jazz, as opposed to somebody training them? So, I mean, I think if anything, he was doing something great. And I think it confused music critics because, again, it was an opera, but opera with opera, you interpret it, but there's no improvisation and spontaneity. Now, there's no improvisation with Porgy and Bess, but you can interpret the songs. There's probably hundreds of thousands of versions of Just Summertime, covers of that. And that song opens Porgy and Bess. So it's very unique in the sense that, like, it's a jazz opera, and we looked a little bit at Umbrellas of Cherbourg, but this was 25 years earlier or something. But it's a little bit like that, and I think it was way ahead of its time because people didn't understand it, and they didn't know what to think of it, because most classical works aren't, you're not supposed to improvise. With Wagner, with his operas, it was all written out. With jazz music, none of it was written out. Well, with Gershwin, it's written out, but there's some interpretation. I mean, everybody had their own version of Porgy and Bess, including Miles Davis. So he moves to Hollywood and, goes to Beverly Hills and gets this great house and plays tennis with Harpo Marx and Charlie Chaplin and even Arnold Schoenberg, the very serious, great composer. They would play tennis all the time. And even still in his 30s, he was asking for composition lessons. And Schoenberg was like, there's not much I can teach you. I think he was just in such a different universe than they were, that they couldn't, I don't think it made sense to them, which is unfortunate. But I mean, it shows you how much he was still willing to learn, wanted to learn. And he said shortly before he died to his sister that he felt like he didn't even scratch the surface of what he could have accomplished in his life. So it's really too bad. It was a brain tumor, and it wasn't treated well. And he didn't. He had blackouts, and he had horrible headaches, and it was just, it's really terrible. And one of the composers he really idolized was Alban Berg. We won't do a class on Berg. I don't really find his music that interesting. He's a genius. He's like Schoenberg. It's Schoenberg, Webern, and Berg, and they are very heavily in. It's not tonal music. It's atonal music, and we won't go too much into that. But Gershwin loved Berg, and I'm not belittling Berg at all. It's not my thing. But Gershwin really studied all of Berg's, lyric suite and all of his music, and they met in Vienna. And Berg played music for Gershwin on the piano. And after that, Gershwin played some of his songs for Berg. And he was a little reluctant, a little embarrassed, because these are very different, two different schools of music. And Berg said, Mr. Gershwin, there's nothing to be embarrassed of. Music is music. So we're going to end with that. What do you think he was saying? Do you think he was belittling Gershwin? No, I think I think it's kind of like Duke Ellington said, there's good music and there's bad music. That's it. There's only two kinds of music. But I think music is music. He didn't want, there's no reason. There's not, one music is not better than another type of music. My music is not better than your music, and vice versa. What I'm sharing with you and talking to you every day about, this is just exploring music, sharing music, learning, creating our minds. But it doesn't mean that it's any better. Your music is just as valid as the music that I like. And isn't that wonderful? So for a classical composer to say that to somebody like George Gershwin, music is music, there's nothing wrong with that. Just like, music should be fun and all those things. So think about that. And with moving forward nobody has the right answer for any of these things. There is no right answer. And isn't that wonderful? It's so great that there's no right answer. If we were all forced to say, well, this is the best kind of music, we all have to, that would be horrible. That would be a world of no freedom, of no, self, will and all that other stuff. So thank God music is just music, because it's so special to different people, and what's special to you is different than what's special to me, and we can share and talk about that. And that's the point of these classes. That's why I talk to you about these people, the people that I'm interested in and that I hope you are. And just like when you send in your music to me, you're teaching me about these things. So remember, music is just music. It's not a game or the end of the world or a competition or a self-righteous thing. It's just, it is there for us to enjoy. And thank God music is there for us, right? We did good work today. This is good. I'm proud of us. Okay. Have a great rest of the day. I've said it all. I'll see you tomorrow.